Well, thank you for joining me today for this review of the 300 Blackout Desert Tech MDRX. It's been an interesting journey with this rifle. I bought it as a 308. I tried out a lot of ammunition in that particular caliber. Got to shoot an ES tactical barrel in 308 in this gun, and still wasn't super happy with it. So I talked to a guy online, and he wanted to trade me my 16-inch 308 for his 300 Blackout kit. And I was a little bit hesitant because I had read on Facebook and Reddit in one place that there were some issues with like the early 300 Blackout kits. At the time, they weren't selling 300 Blackout kits. And so I said, I agreed. We made the trade, and I've had a ton of fun shooting the MDR in 300 Blackout. One other addition to this particular gun is it's got a trigger job from Bill Springfield. So the trigger is now right around 3.5-ish pounds. And I've had a lot of fun with it. When the MDRX was first released, it was released in 4 calibers. Those calibers were 223, is it Wildy, 308, 65 Creedmoor, and 300 Blackout. And unfortunately, there was only 100 or so-ish kits that were made and sold that went out to people. And they prioritized making the other 3 calibers over the 300 Blackout kit, which was kind of unfortunate for a little bit, because I know there were some people who really wanted to shoot a 300 Blackout bullpup, and the only option, I think, at that time for a 300 Blackout bullpup was the X95. About that kit, there were some things about it that were kind of unique. At that time, that particular kit was a 1-in-6 twist. It had the same gas plug style that was being shipped on rifles of the time, which is they were lettered. So it had 2 normal settings, 2 suppressed settings, and 2 advanced settings. So when you buy a 300 Blackout Desert Tech MDR, it typically ships with your 5.56 bolt barrel and then the 300 Blackout specific gas block. I believe they say that's pressed in. I've taken a bore scope down this rifle, and kind of looks neat inside there. I'll roll that in just for a second, just so you can see what it looks like versus the older one. In addition to that, it comes with a shorter recoil spring that is supposed to be used to replace the recoil spring that's already in the firearm if you bought it as a kit. If you bought it as the rifle itself, it should already be in there. And so one of the questions I had was, well, I have a 308. Why can't I just shoot with the standard recoil spring in the rifle and just convert it like I would the other 3 calibers? And, well, I called and talked to Desert Tech. Their response basically was, it probably won't work. And it did. It did. Well, it definitely does for supersonic. Let's put it that way. Works for supersonic, no problem. Thumbs up. But nobody buys a 300 Blackout rifle just supersonic. So I invested in subsonic ammunition, and lo and behold, I still got it to work. Fast forward a few months, and Desert Tech announces that they are making, producing, and shipping 300 Blackout kits, which I thought was really neat. And then I noticed that I was kind of curious about the differences, and so a buddy of mine bought the 300 Blackout kit that they currently make, and we started to do a little bit of compare and contrast. And one of the things I noticed when we compared the adjusters is all of his were got sequentially bigger, whereas mine kind of went all over the place. And so then I happened to come across a Reddit thread where all of the gas plugs that have been, or adjusters that have been used in MDRs were on a single report, and they had the porthole sizes that were in here, and what they look like. And all of them, but the early 300 Blackout kit, had this same sequentially larger pattern of adjustment holes. So I sent mine in to Desert Tech and was trying to get them to just change the adjuster so I could have just like the current one, but they couldn't do that. So I ended up with the current version of the 300 Blackout kit. Now, some things I would like to point out about mine that may or may not be the same about yours. I'm still currently using the recoil spring that you can find on the other calibers other than 300 Blackout. And I just wanted to point that out because this is kind of an experiment on the regular recoil spring in the gun with a 300 Blackout kit. So far, supersonics cycle fine. Some supersonics cycle better on setting 3 than setting 1. So for example, steel cased, I want to say it was Tula, but it may not have been, cycled better on setting 3, which on setting 1 caused a really interesting malfunction. In that I couldn't get the round didn't have the bolt didn't seem to have enough energy to kick the round into the ejection chute. And so what would happen is that round, and it only happened like twice, which is why I changed the gas setting, but it didn't have enough energy to kick it all the way into the chute. And so when the bolt came to come forward, it didn't have enough energy, I think, to come all the way forward because I had a piece of steel or brass that was partially in the chute. So it stopped the bolt from coming forward. I changed the gas setting to 3 and that problem stopped happening on my steel case. So minor issue, not really a big deal. Everything outside of that, though, has been, fully functional. Every time I change ammo for supersonic, it works great. Talking about accuracy in the gun, supersonics, it tends to do pretty well. I have accuracy tested this with SIG 125s, and then I believe I'm using the Ammo Inc. 110s. I've shot other stuff. I've shot Barmageddons out of these, a bunch of 110 stuff. And yeah, it seems to shoot and function pretty well with all of those. The Ammo Inc. and the SIG were somewhere around like 1.5 inch territory. Some of that could be me, but I feel like that's pretty good. 1.5 inch for 300 Blackout out of this is pretty good. I think the Ammo Inc. is a little bit more affordable in my area, so I'll probably use and shoot more of that. As far as like accuracy testing the subsonics, I'm gonna tell you right now, I didn't do that. I can say they do group a little wider, and because it's subsonic, there's a definite difference in where they're gonna hit versus my supersonic 0. So I'm about, depending on which brand I'm using, about 6 inches low. So I got to aim high at 100 yards. There are some brands that don't seem to work in my 300 Blackout. So I have two. I've got this gun, and I have an AR in 300 Blackout. And one of the ammunitions that I wasn't able to get to work is this Hornady Black 208 grain projectile. They're neat. They look great. But I've had 3 boxes of these, and I just can't seem to get them to cycle in my 2 300 Blackout guns. Your mileage may vary. I just haven't been able to get them to do that. However, I will make a caveat and say that when I shot the 208 grain 300 Blackouts, it was not with the current 1-in-7 twist kit. It was with the previous 1-in-6 twist and that gas system there. But other than that, so far I've had success with Winchester 220 grain and SIG 220 grain. And so I've got some other stuff I'm going to be setting up to shoot. This Underwood 220 grain is on my list to go out and see if it functions. And of course, I've got some American Eagle 220 grain. I have shot some 190s actually out of this subsonic, And that worked and functioned on setting 3 out of this gun. So that was kind of neat going to range the other day. The purpose still wasn't to accuracy tested it, but I think it was probably a fist size group at 100 yards, if I recall. It was still fun. Subsonics, I really like shooting subsonic. It's just still a little expensive for me. One of the things I really like about the 300 Blackout is when charging the gun, and let's just say, and I don't have another magazine here, but it's not as picky when it comes to if I short stroke the charging handle here. I can still rack the gun a second time and kick that round out instead of having to like open the take the forward ejecting the chute off, push the round out, all that fun stuff. When I've had an issue with the 300 Blackout generally because of my error in charging the gun, basically it usually just takes a second really sharp rack and it will kick that spent casing in the chute and it usually goes right out. Actually, I find that to be kind of neat because I was able to, doing that particular accidentally short stroking this gun in 5.56 or 3.08 requires you to take off the forward ejection chute and try and solve that problem. But I don't see it as an issue here on the 300 Blackout. One of the other things I think some people might want to know is when you're shooting this gun in 300 Blackout, it does deform brass. Just keep in mind, you're taking what was a 223 case and you're cutting it down and then reforming it for this 30 caliber projectile. And so what happens is the scissor mechanism, instead of having your case mouth up here where it would be in 5.56, case mouth is here, and that scissor mechanism actually punches right in this vicinity, and it deforms the brass. Is it a major thing? No. It shouldn't take more than running it through your press, but it's something to be aware of. So during the update release of the 300 Blackout kits, Desert Tech made sure to make a warning, and that's included in your 300 Blackout kit, to not shoot your MDRX on a subsonic setting when you're shooting supersonics. So typically settings 1 through 3 on your gas piston or your gas regulator are going to be your supersonics. I think if I recall, I have this up here, I'll throw it in here in a second, but I think 3 is good for both suppressed and unsuppressed supersonics. I have had subsonics work on 3. 6 is going to be unsuppressed subsonic, and I think 4 and 5 are suppressed settings for subsonic. However, this Huxworks can doesn't really have much back pressure, so your mileage may vary depending on what it is you use. One of the things I wanted to point out, though, that is kind of a downside to converting a MDRX to 300 Blackout is if you plan on shooting subsonics, you're probably going to have to use that shorter 300 Blackout specific recoil spring. If you're just going to shoot supersonics, between myself and my buddy, so far we haven't had any issues. I use the standard recoil spring. He's using he's swapped out both. The problem I have with the recoil spring, the shorter recoil spring, is it's not a quick change kind of situation. You have to have some tools at home and some Loctite to take the op rod off the bolt carrier, change springs, and then there's a whole process on the Desert Tech YouTube on how to do that. But that is not a quick process, and I believe Loctite takes about a day to cure. So that's not a quick change feature. I suppose, though, if you really wanted to make it a quick change, continue the quick change capabilities of your MDR, you may just have to invest in a second bolt carrier, one with the standard recoil spring and one with the 300 Blackout recoil spring. Spoiler warning, that's about $650. that would just be my workaround for if you wanted to, if you're the kind of person who has this in 300 Blackout and then want to switch to 308, probably easier to just have another bolt carrier and just throw it all in. And that way you'll keep your caliber change capabilities and still be able to shoot 300 Blackout in subsonic, because that's pretty much what that recoil spring is for. Thank you for joining me today on this little walkthrough of the Desertec MDR in 300 Blackout. Like I said, I like shooting this gun in this caliber. It is a lot of fun. And then throwing 300 Blackout subs in it, because that's what you shoot 300 Blackout for, is a ton of fun. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.